of these is that without a strong economy, you cannot achieve your goals as a nation. All good government must start with nurturing a strong, innovative, dynamic, entrepreneurial, market-based economy. In the 1980s, we threw off the shackles of the federation institutions that Paul Kelly, who was here today, wrote about in The Uncertainty, that were holding our economy back. This led my generation into 30 years of economic change that, despite some missteps along the way, including a recession we had to have, produced the longest period of continuing economic growth that any nation in the modern world has known. And there have been strong contributions made to this achievement by both sides of politics, which I acknowledge, and always, though, with a Liberal and National support. As we entered the pandemic, I was pleased that after almost 6 years of painstaking fiscal effort, we had restored our budget to balance and maintained our AAA credit rating. This was achieved by focusing on economic growth and containing growth in public spending, which at the time our government had the lowest rate of growth in public spending of any Australian government for decades. This would prove vital in the years that followed. Having saved for a rainy day, it was now raining. It was pouring, and we had to respond. Australia would emerge with one of the lowest fatality rates from COVID in the developed world. When compared to the average fertility rates of the OECD countries, Australia's response saved more than 30,000 lives. We were described as the gold standard of COVID responses by Bill Gates at the Munich Security Conference, and the second most COVID-prepared nation by the Johns Hopkins Institute. This will always be to Greg Hunt's great credit, and all those he worked with, his eternal credit. It is also true that during the pandemic the rate of death by suicide actually fell and remained down in 2021. This was nothing short of an answer to prayer and the extraordinary efforts of our mental health workers, professionals and services. And I particularly want to acknowledge Professor Pat McGorry and Christine Morgan, who were incredible supports to me during that time. But our plan was not just about saving lives, but to save livelihoods as well. And this was achieved with Australia emerging with one of the strongest economies through COVID. Our historic economic response kept 700,000 businesses in business. It kept more than 1 million Australians in work. And despite these unpredicted outlays, Australia was one of just 9 countries to retain our AAA credit rating. Our response was timely, it was targeted, and it was temporary. And we responsibly retired measures as soon as it was prudent to do so, leading to an historic reduction in the actual budget deficit, with the budget even moving into structural surplus during COVID. And as Josh asked me to remind everyone this morning, an unemployment rate with a 3 in front of it when we left. JobKeeper and the myriad of economic supports designed by Josh and I with Matthias Cormann, and later Simon Birmingham, and the whole team at Treasury and the ATO, would have been fanciful had we not entered into this crisis with a tank that was full. We cannot take our economy for granted. Employers and businesses creating jobs is how you run a strong economy and put a budget into structural balance and keep it there. During my time in this place, I observed that many of the old partisan differences on economic policy have regrettably re-emerged. In 2019, we fought an election on this and we prevailed in our miracle election win. Looking forward, we must be careful not to reinstitutionalise our economy. Such an approach will only negate the capacity we have as a nation to deliver on the essentials that Australians rely on, crush entrepreneurial spirit and that wonderful spirit of small business, and leave us vulnerable in the face of new threats to our sovereignty.